Everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Improving Global Transportation, BSR's Clean Cargo Working Group. My name is Lucinda Broad, and I'm one of the community managers here at 2 Degrees, and I'm your host for this webinar. I'm very pleased to introduce you to today's speakers, Andy of BSR, Willem Beertijs of Heineken, and Teamson of Maersk Line. After today's presentations, there'll be some time to address any questions that you might have. You can questions to me at any point by typing into the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen and pressing send. If you have problems with the technology or the audio during the presentation, please use the chat box on the right-hand side to send me a message. From the drop menu, just select to send a message to the host and I'll get back to you. I'll hand over to Andy for the first part of today's session. To you, Andy.
Thank you, and thank you 2 Degrees for giving us this opportunity to discuss this topic with you all today. So just to kick off, hi, my name is Angie Farag, as Lucy mentioned. I work at BSR, leading our global transport and logistics practice. I'm joined today by Willem Beertijs from Heineken, who's the global category buyer logistics for Heineken, and Mads Teamson, the environment manager at Maersk Line. Before over to our speakers today, I'd just like to set the scene and introduce the topic of discussion by explaining a little bit about BSR and what we're seeing from brands' needs for sustainability performance and data from their logistics business partners today, as well as introduce the Clean Cargo Working Group. Each speak for about 10 minutes maximum to allow you plenty of time for questions. The slides and the contact details for all of us will be available after this meeting, of course, so you get in touch after the meeting if you don't have a chance to ask a question today. Is a global business network focused on sustainability. We have global membership of over 300 companies and other stakeholders in a variety of sectors and across a number of sustainability topics to improve the company sustainability strategies as well as address some of the major sustainability issues of today. We are on a one-to-one basis with companies and as well through a number of different collaborative initiatives. My particular focus at BSR is working on sustainability topics through the transport and logistics supply chain. Our global team work with companies on a number of different projects and collaborative initiatives in this sector. One collaboration, which is the topic of today, is the long-standing Clean Cargo Working Group. Going into the work of the Clean Cargo, I'd like to just take a few moments to reflect on why such collaboration of companies came about and also why it's really ever more significant today. Draw on 3 key points that we're seeing from the needs of global brands and also from the evolving regulatory landscape. So it's widely accepted today that as a significant contributor to global CO2 emissions, the transport sector needs to make environmental improvements in the pursuit of creating a low-carbon economy. Today, about 4% of global CO2 emissions come from shipping, and that's equivalent to that in aviation also. The IMO and other authorities, such as the European Commission, are leaning much more heavily on the idea of mandatory monitoring, reporting and verification mechanisms in the coming years. And we're already going to see in France in 2013, October 2013, that there will be a law in place for any goods shipped from or through France to have a carbon label. These trends, amongst others, are recognized by global brands today who are setting ambitious targets to reduce emissions from their logistics networks, as you can see on the slide. In order to understand where reductions within the logistics networks can be made, though, for shippers, it's really necessary to understand the real impacts across the chain on a clear basis, and critically how to actually measure these in a really credible, consistent and comparable way. With robust data, it's going to be difficult to convince your procurement teams to make business decisions based on sustainability criteria. And without being able to do that, doesn't help your business partners to make the investments in technology and operations required to allow the emissions reductions over time. This is when cargo comes in and where we feel that this provides the access to brands to be able to get credible data that you need. Third trend and point I'd like to make is just that whilst CO2 is clearly the significant environmental performance indicator, we're also seeing the trend from studies that we've done with brands that over the years there will be a continued raising of the bar on expectations of business partners across other sustainability criteria, as well as looking more deeply through the supply chain. Again, also another reason why Clean Cargo looks also beyond CO2 in the measures that it requires from the industry to report on. These topics will be further addressed probably by our speakers and probably by your questions, but now I just want to briefly explain how Clean Cargo Working Group is designed to help its members along this journey. Cargo Working Group is a global B2B initiative made up of leading cargo carriers and their customers. Currently, we have about 33 members, dedicated to environmental performance improvement in the marine container transport, measurement, evaluation, and reporting. The group are to enable ocean freight carriers to track and benchmark their performance and easily report to customers in a standardized format. Cargo owners, who we call shippers, the ability to view and compare carriers' environmental performance when reporting to be able to make more informed business decisions. The third is really to drive collaborative effort to raise the environmental performance through best practice sharing, which members are able to do in the Clean Cargo Forum. And finally, we want to improve the alignment and standardization of methodologies and reporting across both the ocean segment as well as across the intermodal chain. It's important to note that the discussions within Clean Cargo, as well as the way that we deal with data, is protected and governed governed and regulated by the group's operating principles, strict antitrust policy. Just a quick look through how the group operates in terms of what data is collected. We just wanted to reflect on two aspects here. Firstly, carriers are asked to provide data on an annual basis on indicators that are noted on the slide below, areas of performance that are noted. Carriers provide those data on a vessel-by-vessel basis on specific trains. Data is also verified using the Clean Cargo Working Group verification protocol. And this information is then provided to shippers through a standardized scorecard format. Carriers complete a qualitative survey annually, which is also made available to shippers, that constitutes a standardized shipper questionnaire. And this helps further improve consistency and efficiencies for both parties. Individual carrier information that's provided on a business-to-business basis, our data allows members to review industry-wide trends and benchmarking, as well as aggregate information that can be collectively discussed to help companies understand and review how they can impact emissions reductions on a trade lane basis by certain operational and business decisions. Clean Cargo also aspires to ensure better data available for all, and over the last years we've published average aggregate emissions factors that can be used by stakeholders and companies. As well as the sharing of aggregate data to ensure that representative container shipping sector data is publicly available. The group also actively collaborates with a number of different initiatives and authorities to influence and improve alignment and standardization of methodology and measurement across the intermodal chain. Harmonization is key for brands to use this data effectively across the supply chain. I'd like to hand over to Willem to hear about Heineken's perspective and experience in working with Clean Cargo Working Group and the sustainability challenges that you face in your business today. Willem.
Thank you. My name is Willem Beerthuis. I'm Global Category Leader Logistics within Heineken, and amongst others responsible for the global ocean freight, including the sustainability program within ocean freight. First of all, I would like to give you a review of Heineken's world. Heineken is the strongest beer brand in the world, with 70,000 employees and 40 breweries around the world, producing approximately 214 million liters a year. In 2020, we had a 17.1 billion turnover, resulting in a 1.4 billion net profit. As a shipper, Heineken is moving roughly 140,000 TEUs around the world with approximately 25 carriers, of which the majority of them is a member of the Cargo Working Group. I can say the last 5 years there have been significant changes in the world. We have significant change with ocean freight due to change of interest by the different stakeholders, which I mentioned here. The cargo owners, for instance, 5 years ago, wanted containers to be moved as quick as possible. At the time also the supply was an issue, and they were fighting to get the containers around the world. Currently, it's a little more different. Shippers are also conscious about sustainability, the carbon footprint impact, and taken into decision drivers. Now, regional governments have become more strict over the last 5 years regarding waste and regulations. Consumers are demanding information about the CO2 footprint of products they buy, and it's even been seen as a marketing value. Investors in ocean freight are really weather these days and are focusing more and more on return on investments. As a result, cost reduction programs have started with almost all the carriers around the world. So there is pressure in the whole industry, and for the last, I can say personally, I've experienced that most stakeholders are moving towards a more sustainable approach. Heineken, we see the market changing. The first thing, signals are already there. We see products with carbon labels on it. There's not many yet, but as Angie explained, it will be mandatory in the near future. We see the first signals ahead. And we as Heineken, as a market leader, we believe that we should act on it and not wait until the moment comes. Heineken want to have a ban site, and therefore we decided in our carbon footprint, to join the carbon CCWG to ensure we have a uniform way of measurement and reporting on our CO2 and ocean freight. Clean Cargo provided the results over the last 5 years that we now have a good understanding of our own footprint. We can even measure it on a button level, so we know what the carbon footprint is on a Pacific lane from, for instance, Rotterdam to New York. We can even steer on the CO2 emissions during our tender period, so we can make a conscious choice which carrier, which lane we are using to bring our beer from one point to the other point. That together helped us to make a shift over the last 5 years, and we believe we're heading the right way now. Then I would like to finalize my presentation. I would like to give the floor back to Angie.
Thank you very much, Willem. Before we take on the questions, I think that it would be great if we could just hear from Mads, please, from the carrier perspective.
All right. My name is Maersk Line, and I'm a global advisor in Maersk Line on environment and CSR. I work in our environment and CSR department, and responsible for developing our sustainability strategies and governance of our strategies, setting targets and running different kind of sustainability and environmental projects. I'm also our representative in the Clean Cargo Working Group. I've been over the years now. And a little bit first about Maersk Line. Most of you probably heard about the company, but for those who haven't, we are the largest container shipping company in the world. We operate more than 600 vessels sailing around the world all the time, moving goods in millions of containers. We transport approximately 16 million containers every year. We're in more than 125 countries and have approximately 25,000 employees. But what we do is that we are connecting consumers around the world, and because of our size, we with all this we burn million tons of fuel every year, approximately 10 million tons fuel every year, and that of course is a major impact from an environmental point of view, and we emit approximately 1,000 part of all the CO2 emitted in the world from our vessels. So that's in our size taken into account. That of course highlights the importance of doing something about it and being a more sustainable company. And that leaves some of our ambitions, and Maersk Line business in this area. We want to be the best environmental performer in our industry. That is one of those that is it's not very easy to prove that you are best or whether you are among the best. And it's one of the reasons why where clean cargo can benefit us. I'll get back to that in a little while. What we also want to do is that we want to compete on environmental performance with our competitors, because we believe that competition of the ocean shipping carriers will to improve performance improvements. And we also want our customers to use environmental performance in the decision making, or at least in their decisions when they pick carriers. Because also that will also lead to improvement and more competition between the carriers. and all that can we talk a little bit about clean cargo, because this is where we believe that clean cargo can help us. It can help achieve our ambitions in some of these areas. For all, we believe that clean cargo is a sustainability leadership initiative within logistics, which aligns very well with Maersk Line's sustainability ambitions. It's a very platform for dialogue and alignment of objectives between container lines and our customers. It's a forum where we can discuss our objectives, what we are working on, also discuss is possible, what is maybe not possible, and what are some of the obstacles to get over this, and have that dialogue directly with our customers. And I think will help to better understand our customers and also for them to understand us, and therefore help us to better meet our customers' requirements and needs. Yes, that in relation to that, clean cargo, and that's one of the main things in clean cargo as well, is the standards, industry standards, for how to measure environmental performance. All form the base for how we can track our emissions, but also what we can deliver to our customers. And I think that, and I think it was already mentioned by Andy, is that we have developed a standard way to calculate CO2 emissions in the Clean Cargo Working Group. And that is now established as an industry standard, and most carriers in the world use this standard. And all enables to do credible calculations, also enable our customers to do credible CO2 calculations. Numbers that we calculate, our competitors calculate, is based on the same standard, therefore comparable. It allows us to benchmark internally, but also enables customers to benchmark, and eventually our customers can also use it in the selection criteria when they pick container services. The last I mentioned about clean cargo, which I think fits very well to what Maersk Line wants to do, is that it's probably take part of harmonizing not only CO2 emissions in container shipping, but all across the whole supply chain. And that thing that we think is important, because we think that should be able to, and we know that our customers also want to be able to calculate emissions not only from one port to a different port, but from the whole supply chain, including in transportation. And that is also something that is important to us when we transport our customers' goods, of course. But that was one of the benefits that I see on clean cargo that benefits Maersk Line. Back to you.
And thank you, Wille, for your presentations. Very helpful. We're having questions coming through from the audience. Please do keep them coming. I'd like to first respond to one or two and pose them to you both, Mads and Willem. Firstly, one quite straightforward one. There was a question that came through that was asking if there is a listing of carriers and members of the Clean Cargo Working Group. We do have that in this deck, a little earlier on in the slides, which we can make available later, and it is also publicly available on the BSR website, which is www.bsr.org/cleancargo. So please do take a look at the member list if interested. So the questions that we have are actually very interestingly posed. Firstly, on some of the issues that are coming in from a regulatory perspective. So I think we'll just take a couple of those now and then move back into the shipper realm, as well as more specifically about clean cargo. The first question I would like to just pose to Mads and Willem, and I can also respond to this a little bit as well, is how do we see the IMO responding on the issue of bringing marine transport under the Kyoto Protocol and other things that are happening with the COP and UNFCCC? Perhaps would you like to speak to that for a moment, and also connect this further to what Clean Cargo is doing to work with some authorities and regulatory bodies on this topic?
Yes, of course. Well, it's an easy question to answer because I think you were talking the question was specifically about IMO, what IMO is doing, and IMO, of course, is an FN unit that is politically controlled by the different countries that are members of IMO, which is most of the countries around the world. So what IMO is doing is very much influenced by the political landscape around the world. So it's not controlled by the shipping lines. But there is a lot of talks in the IMO on what to do in this area, and there is also some progress in this area, though it's going quite slow. But I also think that this is actually where we see Clean Cargo plays a big role, because for the politicians, and that's not a secret to anyone, it's difficult for politicians around the world to agree on what to do on CO2 on a global level, whether to have a global Kyoto Protocol or something like that. And therefore it's also difficult for the politicians to agree on what to do in IMO for the shipping sector. But Clean Cargo is actually trying to get around that, because we can either sit down and wait for the politicians to agree on what to do in this area. Maybe they'll agree, maybe they will never agree. Maybe there will be some regional regulation instead, which could easily happen in EU, for example. But we don't want to wait for that, because we also know if politicians make up their mind on this, know which direction they will go. So that's where we see Clean Cargo play a big role. In Cargo, we are doing this for ourselves as an industry-led initiative, trying to put together some standard way of measuring CO2 emissions, which will enable competition and enable our customers to make informed decision making in the supply chain, and that way we can start to compete more in this area and reduce our emissions. So then to add from your side, Willem?
No, I think I agree with you. I think the most important things you mentioned is that you can wait and see what comes to you, or you can be proactive and we go to IMO with solutions. So you can talk about the solutions instead of waiting for the message. I think also on local level you see changes on waste imports, on the usage of bunker fuel. There's a lot of regulation, not only IMO. There are a lot of on all levels. There are different regulations being put in place, because everybody, I believe, has a few things to change to travel. And it'd be very difficult to do it on a global level, because every region has its own is a compare each other. So it will go slowly, but it will come. There will be more regulations and such.
Just add one point here around how Clean Cargo has interacted a little bit in such dialogue. I think most people will have seen that the European Commission set up to challenge the IMO in somewhat this last few months, to say that they will push for having some level of mandatory monitoring, reporting, verification in the shipping industry over the coming year. They are working on the proposal how to shape that, as is the United States at the same time. And we've learned that the proposals from both the Commission and the US will be taken to the IMO at the next MEPC meeting, discussed at the IMO as to whether this would be a starting place for the IMO to look at how to set the stage for mandatory reporting, so that there can be further decisions on the regulatory context of the future, whether it will be a carbon tax or a carbon trade. Clean Cargo was invited to the Commission meetings just as a stakeholder to be able to provide our input in terms of our experience over the years with being able to work with the industry as an industry-led initiative to set an industry standard methodology for the container segment and report in a standardized way business to business. And it was as a good system to be able to help other segments think about how they can set their methodologies. I think it's an area where Clean Cargo and its membership would like to see further contribution going forward, so we can, as Mad said, help to ensure that when politicians think through how to set out the methodologies and reporting mechanisms in place for the future, it can be influenced by what is already working by the industry, taking it forward themselves. We have quite a few technical questions that have come through. We'd just also like to bring it back to Clean Cargo and the shipper side for a moment for a couple of questions that have come in. And then we can go back to some of the more technical questions. From a shipper perspective, why is it that Heineken has focused really on looking at the ocean container transportation and the shipping segment? Is this an area that is significant for your supply chain, and what other work are you doing in this area?
First of all, we're working on both on road freight and ocean freight. So we're looking at both, but I can assure that ocean freight is a huge part of our business, as we, for instance, all the beer in the USA, Heineken beer in the USA is exported from the Netherlands by containers, and so to many other regions around the world. And also our raw materials, packaging materials, etc. are moved from one country to the bridge we have around the world. So it's a significant part of our supply chain. It was also, until a couple of years ago, kind of a blind spot regarding carbon emissions. It was unclear for us what actual bunker consumption was for a 40-foot container. So there are two reasons. One is that it was a kind of a blind spot in the past, and secondly, it's an important part of our chain. So the question?
That's great, thank you, Willem. I think a further research we did with the members of Clean Cargo Working Group shows that some of the shippers that partake in this, actually, when they're mapping, they can see that about up to 70% of the carbon emissions in their logistics supply chain are in the ocean segment. I think this is so why it's quite interesting for shippers to have this information about their ocean carrier partners, business partners.
Maybe I can add something to that as well, because we of course not a cargo owner, but because we sit in the middle and we transport the cargo, then of course we have quite a lot of dialogue with our customers around these things, especially with some of the big brands like Heineken, but also many other big companies who are interested in this area. And we do see increasing interest still from many of these companies about measuring and knowing their impact, like Heineken is saying. And we receive a lot of questions about how to measure, how do you calculate CO2 emissions, how can we calculate it, and so on. We go in dialogue with many of our customers around this. And that is typically the first thing they will, most of them ask about, and also other things that are important from a sustainability point of view, of course. But it's one of the most tangible things for them, I think.
Great, thank you very much. I have another question here that would be great for you to address, please, Mads. There's a question around the level playing field issue, I guess, in terms of how carriers can respond to the need to improve their environmental performance. It's around whether or not this is sort of a capital issue, depending on the size of the company, or compared to the things that you have from your business partners and the requests that come in. How do you see the role of Clean Cargo Working Group in this area for carriers to be able to compete with each other on the topic of sustainability?
But we think a group like Clean Cargo Working Group is crucial in order to do that. We have a standard way of calculating emissions. Our customers will not be able to compare emissions between different carriers because it will be calculated in different ways. Some might be verified, some of it's not verified. Some follow one methodology, some follow another methodology, some have made up their own methodology. Some using some very broad frameworks under which you can calculate emissions in 100 different ways. So a standard, industry standard way of calculating this is crucial. Otherwise, competition and between the carriers is more or less impossible, I think. Of course, also CO2 emissions is of course also linked to our fuel consumption. So by reducing your fuel consumption, you will also be more cost efficient. So of course, there will always be some competition between carriers to do that. But if we put on a layer and also have a commercial competition around it through our customers, it will just be another means to reduce emissions and another driver to drive emissions in the whole sector. I think it's very, very important to have standards like what Clean Cargo can develop.
That's great. Thank you very much. And this moves us to Willem. Actually, also there's a good question for Heineken now. With this type of data that you can get from Clean Cargo Working Group, having credible, comparable data from your carrier business partners, what do you do with data? What type of decisions can you make based on the CO2 emissions data that you receive?
What we do with it is that we compare services. For instance, a container moving from Rotterdam to New York can go via Maersk up to New York and can go New York directly. This has an impact on the carbon footprint. And we use Decision Drive, to be honest. Secondly, what we also do with it, we measure our total footprint of our beer for product. So from the production, from the brewery up until the customer, and we try to improve it, and we try to, because for a couple of years we had no good idea about what our carbon footprint was of that bottle. So now we've used the Clean Cargo data to calculate it, steer on it. So we know part of the supply chain. We know what the carbon emission is, and we try to reduce it one by one. And it's a battle, but it's we have the data. We can do something about it, and it's much better than a couple of years ago.
That's great. So we have another question that's around how Clean Cargo Working Group, I think it's connected here, and how Clean Cargo Working Group is looking at with other organizations and also other supply chain partners, such as terminals, haulers and feeders in the supply chain. And I think I'll just speak to this point briefly and then hand it to the members of Clean Cargo that we have on the call. That this is a topic that we have been discussing recently in the group, such that we would like to work more across the supply chain. It's been very much based on members' focus over the last years, what we can focus our time on, and that has been very much on making sure that the methodology for the ocean segment is covered and well managed. And we do see more of a need from the shippers to be able to map their entire supply chain, and understanding that will require some data from the other players along the maritime segment. So looking at how to build relations between other initiatives that are working on this for terminals, as well as opening the doors for feeder operators to be able to provide data through this system, so that can be added to the carbon footprinting that is done through Clean Cargo Working Group. Do Mads or Willem want to add to that answer?
A little bit, but I think you already mentioned a little bit in your presentation before, Angie, that we are working with many other organizations who are also looking at carbon methodologies and carbon reporting, such as Smartway in the US or Green Freight Europe, who's looking at trucking in Europe, but also many other projects who are looking at different modes. We as Clean Cargo, we are experts in ocean shipping, and we have also considered what should we do. Should we try to expand to cover other modes as well? But it has been pretty clear to us that we are experts in the O part, while other groups know more about some of the other segments, other modes of transport like trucking, rail, aviation, and so. So instead of trying to develop something in that area, we have decided to work together to collaborate with other groups that we find are experts in these other modes. And I think the ambition will be over certainly that will take some time, but the ambition will be to over time have a full supply chain view on this, and be able to collect or at least share data from all modes, but do that together with some of the other groups we think are better at in the different modes.
Thank you. And I think the last point to mention is also that we are, as Clean Cargo Working Group and the members within it, collaborating on initiatives that are trying to do that, such as the COFRET initiative, which is a European Commission-sponsored project that's looking at harmonizing methodologies across the supply chain. And a question that has come up as well, where we see the other groups that may not be focused on transport logistics, but thinking about putting transport logistics into their own systems, such as the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, who has written us a message here. This is also where we are happy to collaborate to look at how the data and the methodologies that are developed in Clean Cargo can be shared with other up-and-coming initiatives, so that we can continue to enhance the harmonization and not create new standards and methodologies. So, in response to that, I think that is a yes. Just turn this back again to specifically Clean Cargo Working Group in terms of benefits of membership, and also how are you a member? If you become a member, what does that mean? I just ask the question to both Willem and Mads. Willem, in terms of participation in the group, how's that practically? I mean, how much time does it take you in your working schedule to be a member of Clean Cargo Working Group, and how do you participate in that?
Well, as a member, you meet twice a year. One is the spring meeting, one is the fall meeting. Before each meeting, a detailed agenda has been set up. All the topics, decision has to be made upon. People can review that up front, present share insights during the meeting. I must say the last few meetings we've quite some significant steps regarding the measurement, the calculation of carbon footprint. Then Clean Cargo also divided within and you help me, I believe 8 different subgroups working on during the year. So after the meeting, the meetings, certain action plans come out of there, and then they'll be picked up by the subgroups, which are developing more developing it more and come with questions and answer presentation, whatever the action was, and share it again during the next meeting. The time it takes, I would say, a phone call a month during the year, sometimes a little bit more, and it takes you 2 or 3 days once every half a year to attend the meeting. And occasionally there's a event like this, but it only takes an hour. So that's overall, I would say it adds gives you a lot of data. It allows you to get a good insight, and it doesn't have a high burden on your agenda. Angie?
Thank you very much. And Mads, as a active participant in the data methodology subteam, I just wanted to broaden the topic out a little bit to ask, as we focus quite a lot on CO2 emissions on this webinar so far, could you speak a little bit about the other emissions that are measured and what we're doing to work on the quality measurement of those?
Yeah, of course. CO2 has, of course, been one of the been used most on CO2 the last couple of years, and the reason for that is that it's on the agenda for most of the customers in the group, the cargo owners. Furthermore, it's also high on our agenda, of course. So on shipping lines agenda, so that's the focus most on that. Furthermore, there has also been a lot of pressure to do something in this area because politicians are not doing anything in this area. But there are also other major impacts from shipping, especially air emissions like SOx emissions and NOx emissions, and so, which we also measure in Clean Cargo Working Group, and all share data around. There are issues with those things, with NOx and SOx emissions. It's more difficult for shipping lines to do something about it because it's very expensive to reduce your emissions, while CO2 is more related to fuel consumption, and therefore fuel cost and CO2 reduction goes hand in hand, so to say. It's the opposite with NOx and SOx very often, unfortunately. And therefore, it makes it difficult for shipping lines to really focus on reducing this without adding a lot of cost to the transportation, to the unit cost of transporting goods. I can also see there's a few technical questions here around what we do on the fuel we burn, and it is dirty fuel, unfortunately. As it's related to this, and also whether we are pressured to do something in that area. Definitely we are. The whole sector is under huge pressure to do something on this. But fortunately, as it is right now, well, there is not unfortunately, but there is regulation coming in. That's a good thing. We need a level playing field in this area, and to do something to really dramatically change or reduce our emissions, because it's very expensive, as I said. So we need a level playing field. But on top of that, and what we can use in cargo for, will also be to develop some better ways to measure some SOx emissions, so we over time can create a similar competition around NOx emissions as we are trying to do, as we are doing at the moment on CO2. So I think we're focusing on in Clean Cargo for NOx and SOx emissions is more to get measurements in place, so we can actually really drive improvements in performance improvements in those areas. Isn't there, of course, other impacts as well? Ballast water, treat, for example, and so these are also on the radar. In Clean Cargo, it has been discussed a lot what to focus on, and so we are always prioritizing those areas I think are most important. All these areas like ballast water is already regulated and will be very strictly regulated within the next couple of years. So that's why it has been an area that we have deemphasized in Clean Cargo, because we think the global regulation that are entering into force these years will care of most of the environmental problems related to this. So, but that is always something we have to do in Clean Cargo, to try to make a prioritization and focus on those areas where we think it's most important. Maybe I think there was one more question. I could see a technical question around this. No, maybe I already answered it. Oh, it was about the fuel cost of the regulation coming into force in 2015. There's some regulation coming into force that shipping lines in some areas of the world have to burn fuel with lower sulfur content. And that fuel is much more expensive than the dirty fuel, as somebody is calling it, we burn today. And that is, of course, something that will influence our cost, the cost of transporting goods. But it is also something that is probably needed to do because the vessels are polluting a lot, unfortunately, and they even have it has a huge impact on people living close to coastal areas in big cities, and many people die every year because of these emissions. So of course we have to do something about that. So I don't see any way around it that there needs to be more strict regulation on this, and that is also our company's position, and I think many other shipping lines also support that.
Mads, great you addressed some of the technical questions there as well. I'd like to just turn that on a little bit back to clean cargo as well, on the basis that we've had a few questions really about from what about green fleets and the new generation of potential fuels and technology changes and things like this. It's come to us in a number of ways, and I like to frame it as a question that is really moment and then a question, which is clean cargo to date has really looked at how we can build a robust way to measure and report data so that companies can really set the baseline and then start making business decisions based on the fact that now we have standardized, credible data coming out of it. And now we're entering a time where what is the next step? How do you see the really sort of pivotal environmental performance improvement changes? And this is also why the group is designed in the way that it is, as a collaborative forum. So shippers and carriers both have an equal footing in the group to be able to discuss and engage on what does best practice look like, and what can we really do to change the fleet's capacity and capabilities to improve, but as well the shippers themselves in terms of influencing that change. So we do see that there is this area, and we try to build out programs over the year to create the environment so best practice can be shared. But I'd like to ask both Mads and Willem what potential you see for this forum to really drive change, and how open are you to seeing other parties coming in to discuss that. So I think there is some interest from the audience to see how some of those discussions can move from measurement and reporting to beyond that, and looking at the future of how to make transport much more sustainable. So, Willem?
Yeah, thank you. I think of all, what's most important is awareness. Clean cargo helps you with creating awareness yourselves and amongst the other shippers about the carbon footprint you produce. Secondly, what we see as from a personal side, which is also shared with you in the presentation, is that even consumers, we have pressure towards us about expecting us to be more sustainable. You can see it on different playing fields in supermarkets in the UK, on internet, etc. So there's a demand for sustainable products, which will be increasing more and more in the future. And I think if we use that within clean cargo, we can drive the agenda on sustainability and ocean freight. If you make sure you are you represent most of the volume, global volume, and that you've got the participants are the global shippers, MVOC and carriers. Clean cargo is the representing the majority of the global ocean freight, and which means you drive the agenda, because I tell you that a lot of governments, including the IMO, including the USA, etc., want to develop but have no idea how to do it jointly. And I think that's where Clean Cargo can step in. There's no country restrictions or whatsoever, and we can be in the steering wheel and decide how we want to move on in the future. Instead of, let's say, people behind this decide how we should do it. I think that's one of the for Clean Cargo for the future.
Excellent, thank you, Willem. And Mads?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Willem. That could be one way of doing it, and that's also for the longer term. What one of the Clean Cargo can benefit. I think if you look a bit more short term on it, then I think where Clean Cargo can benefit in this area is back to what I said before about competition around environmental performance, enabling our customers to make these choices is the first step. I think we are doing that now. Next will be how to really help customers and discuss that in Clean Cargo, how to integrate this into procurement decisions, for example. How can a company use this information to make the right decision in order to drive the right behavior, but also in order to reduce their own emissions in their own company. I think that's the more short-term solution for how to really make a performance improvement in the short term. And I think and I would actually like to mention in this context that Clean Cargo at the moment is trying to recruit new members, and we want to have a broader membership base, more shippers, more cargo owners in the group, in order to create a more critical mass and really pull this forward and drive a performance improvement among the container lines. I think there have also been some changes within recent years among container lines. I think if you go some years back, none of us were interested in this area. I think there are many reasons for that. I think we were quite slow to take up this agenda. It has really changed within recent years. And all container shipping lines in Clean Cargo at least are interested in this and want to do something and want to reduce our emissions. But in such we really need some more drivers who can really drive these improvements through, and that would be this competition and our customers to make more informed decisions when they pick carriers. So I will definitely recommend more cargo owners to join Clean Cargo and support us in this, and also be part of developing this for their own procurement processes and so, but also in order to develop even better standards to really drive this in the future.
Very much, Mads. That's a good transition to our wrap-up. Sorry for the few questions that we have received that we don't have time to cover today that are more technical. We'll certainly respond offline to those, so please do get back in touch with us after the call. Any further questions that you have, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us. I'd just like to wrap up this webinar, focusing back on how to become a member of Clean Cargo Working Group. We did have a couple of questions about this also that came through around how do you become a member, and is membership open to different modes, and so I'd like to just speak to that a little bit now. So membership is open to all cargo owners, vessel owners, and non-vessel owning ocean carriers. As you can see on the slides previous, we have a number of 3PLs that are part of the Clean Cargo Working Group membership. The membership fees are shown on this slide here. The differential in the membership cost is based on whether or not the company is actually a member of BSR or not. But otherwise, all members pay same dues based on whether they're a cargo owner or a vessel owner or a 3PL. This fee is an annual fee, and companies are more than welcome to join any time of the year. The way we are shaped as an organisation, as a network, can be further explained if you'd like to follow up on that after this call. Broadly, we have a governance structure that is driven by a steering committee. For years, we've had 4 companies who are sit on that steering committee, 2 cargo owners and 2 vessel owners, and they're nominated elected on a 3-year basis. Last fall, we decided as a group to add a 5th company to the steering committee. Given that there is a significant number of 3PLs, we are going to open a seat up for a 3PL to join the steering committee and have the same and electing possibilities every 3 years. The STAR manages the network is that we facilitate it across a number of different time zones because we have a global membership. Many of our calls happen at times that are both possible for Asia-Europe and then US-Europe, so that all members can participate equally. As mentioned previously, it was governed by quite a strict antitrust policy and operating principles. So the interactions of the members, as well as how we share the data, is well regulated and moderated by ourselves and the membership. There are several benefits of membership, as have been pointed out by the speakers today. And members, upon joining, are able to access all of the tools that Clean Cargo Working Group provides, as well as the resources that have been developed over the past, including data. And I'd also just like to mention that in terms of meetings, we did speak about this, but we meet in person as a full group biannually. The next full group meeting is going to be in May in Dubai, and new companies are welcome to join us there. And the second meeting of the year is in San Francisco in the first week of November, which directly precedes the BSR conference. More information about membership, as mentioned, you're able to get in touch with myself or the speakers at BSR and at their companies. And please do visit the Clean Cargo website at your convenience. So thank you very much for your time today. Thanks again to 2 Degrees and Lucinda, and to my speakers, Willem and Mats. Have a good day.
Thanks, Angie. Just so everyone knows, I'm going to be posting the recording and the speaker slides up on 2 Degrees on Monday morning, and I'll send the link out to you via email. That's all from me, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.